Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of the Anywhere Uni live podcast. Tonight, I'm delighted to be with Christy from Northeastern University. Northeastern is well known to be a US university based in Boston, but now they have campuses in different places in the world, and especially a growing campus in London that we hear a lot about. And so we're looking forward to dive into this conversation. Hi, Christy. How are you doing?
Hi, great to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me onto the podcast.
It's a pleasure to have you. We have lots of students interested by the US and also by the UK, and you can offer both. So it's great. It's great to have you.
Yeah.
So before we get started, can you tell us a bit about your role at Northeastern?
Sure, absolutely. So I am the Director of Global Enrollment Strategies. And so that's essentially a fancy title, essentially for Director of International Admissions. So I oversee the recruitment strategy for any students that are applying outside of the United States, and then also oversee the selection and evaluation process for those applicants. As you alluded to, we do have multiple campuses. So we have a few in the United States and also with the London campus. They have a separate evaluation team, but my role really helps bridge the gap between both of our offices to make sure that we have a unified approach to how we meet with students and how we also evaluate them.
Yeah, I almost felt when I organized this podcast with you, like, should we do two sessions? Because maybe things are quite different between your London campus, the admission process there, and then the Boston campus and the admission process on the other side. So we'll try to navigate both and kind of
Sure.
get answers on everything. So could you just briefly kind of introduce Northeastern as an institution to give us a bit more context? What kind of university is it?
Yeah, absolutely. So Northeastern is a private institution. Our first campus where we started is located in Boston, but as we've been already starting to talk about, we really are a global campus now. So we have locations in Boston, Massachusetts, California in the Bay Area in Oakland, London by St. Catherine's Dock, so right in the heart of the city. And we're actually in the process of opening a campus in New York City also. And so the purpose of that is that we want our students to have global experiences. We want students to learn from different cultures, different backgrounds, different communities, because everything that we do at the heart of our university approach is that you're going to be learning by experiencing. So we're actually ranked number one in the U.S. for professional work experience, internships, and co-ops. And so really one of our biggest unique identifiers, besides the fact that we have multiple campuses, is that our students have the opportunity to work a full-time 6-month job more than once if they would like before they graduate. And what's really incredible about that is that our students are graduating not only with a diploma, but also with a resume. 97% of our students within 9 months of graduation do have a job offer or are working, not just a job offer, are working or already in graduate school. That includes students of all citizenships. So our students are really successful. And I believe a big reason why they're transitioning so smoothly into what they want to do is because our learning just doesn't happen within the four walls of a classroom. It's by having mentors, by, like I said, getting that work experience, doing experiential learning, which is all really fantastic. And then the last thing that I want to highlight, especially for this group, is that we do actually have the second largest international student population in the United States. So London campus is a little bit smaller, so we don't have it that large. But as far as the United States goes, we have over 20,000 international students on our campus. So we have a really diverse background where anyone who comes and joins the Northeastern community is going to find friends that are like-minded with similar life experiences, but has the beauty of meeting folks from all over the world too.
Oh, it's amazing. And I kind of want to jump right in the internship question, because I know in the US, it can be a thing. In some countries, it's a big thing. In the UK, I know for traditional UK universities, it's a bit more difficult. Students kind of have to take a sandwich year. It's not that easy. Sometimes I hear from my students to get shorter 2-month internships here and there, probably in terms of the legislation in the UK. So how did you adapt to that in London?
Yeah, so it's definitely fully integrated into our US degrees. With the UK degree, we have all the resources. Because of the legislation, workarounds, like you're saying, it is a little bit more on the shorter term where students would add an additional year, but if they choose to do that, we have some of the best resources in the world for students to take advantage of it.
Yeah, and I would definitely encourage them to do it. I see the difference when students graduate with that kind of experience or not, and it's definitely great to encourage that. All right, and so can you tell us a bit about the experience first on the Boston campus? Like, what would students, if they choose, so is it really like a fluid university where you start somewhere and then you just move around as you progress through your undergraduate, or are you clearly affiliated with the Boston campus or with the London campus? And do you get the same degree at the end?
That's a great question. So no matter where a student studies, the type of experience that they're going to gain is the same, is that experiential hands-on learning. Even with our 3-year UK degree, we were the first US university to be able to offer a fully accredited 3-year UK degree. We actually have a little bit more freedom and flexibility in our plan of study than a traditional 3-year UK degree, specifically so that it embodies the same philosophy of that hands-on learning that we have in the US. When a student applies, they have the option to either first they need to identify, are they interested in a 3-year UK degree in London, or are they interested in a 4-year US degree? After that, there is fluidity, right? So when it comes to the United States with our multiple campuses, they can choose to start in California or New York City and then transfer over to Boston. And then they also could even do, for the 4-year degree, they could do their first year in London and then transfer to Boston for their following 3 years. With our UK students, they can do their 3 years in London. And then if they wanted to do a dual degree and actually earn both the 3-year US and a 3-year UK and 4-year US degree, they could do a 4th year in Boston too. So it's very fluid. And beyond just that first year, regardless of where they start and where they finish, if they wanted to do a study away program at one of our other campuses, they certainly could do that later on too. Really, when I'm advising students about whether, Northeastern is the right fit for them, I always ask first, are you excited about our value? Do you want to spend time learning things by doing and not just reading out of a textbook? Are you excited about the idea of our co-op program? If that is exciting to you, then all of the reason why we have this plethora of options is so regardless of where, what community size or what location, we have something that might align with their interests.
Okay, so they really have to see it as the same institution in terms of values, but at the same time, it's one 3-year UK degree and one 4-year US degree. And if they want, they could try to join both together. Okay, so very, very interesting. So what is like in terms of the difference in terms of academic offering and academic experience? If you are in the US, do you offer everything? And in the UK, do you have a focus on some specific subjects? Do you have an engineering school on both sides? On one side, nowhere? Like what's the academic offering?
Sure. Yeah. So on our Boston campus, we have over 350 majors. So really, whatever it is that a student is looking for, we certainly have. And then our other locations have more specialties. So for example, in London, it's going to be more business and STEM. Actually, similarly with our Oakland campus, our New York City location that we're currently in the process of opening is going to be a more focus on performing arts, right? Because it is in the heart of Broadway.
That's cool.
So that said, if a student wants to have a home-based campus where they really are looking to study, and they only want to be at that campus, then it's important to make sure that the major that they're interested in is offered at that location. But if they do want to eventually end up in Boston, regardless of where they do their first year, they're going to have the offering of literally hundreds of majors to choose from. And we essentially have everything in that capacity.
All right, great. And so what does it look like in terms of let's say a typical week for a student at the Boston campus and also in the London campus in terms of number of contact hours? Is it like a closed campus? Do students live on campus? What kind of experience do you get in Boston and in London?
Yeah, great question. So students are typically going to be in classes between 12 and 15 hours. And then any time any time for studying is going to be independent outside of that. That still leaves them a decent amount of time to be really involved outside of the classroom. So we have over 600 student organizations within our entire campus network. And we actually very intentionally have similar clubs on similar campuses. So let's say that you want to be involved in a debate team. That may be at our London campus where you're spending your first year. And then in your second year, you're transferring over to Boston. You already have been ingrained in that club. You've already been a part of it. So now you can just join the section of that club on our Boston campus. So there's always something to do. All of our campuses also have an involvement fair in the first month, where it's a big tabling event where you're able to learn about all the different opportunities that the university has to offer, and for folks to really decide, how they want to get involved. When it comes to, just outside of athletics and clubs, our campuses are really located in cities, and so that is going to really shape the student experience too. So like I said, London is going to be right by St. Catherine's Docks, right in the heart of the city. They get a tube card for the entire year, so free public transportation to go out and sightsee and enjoy all the different things that a city has to offer. Similar to other UK universities, there is not a meal plan, but we do have housing that is preset for students. So they'll already be living with other Northeastern students. On the Boston campus, all students will also live on campus. That is going to be more enclosed. In London, it's going to be a little bit more spread out, where they really get to walk through the city and enjoy everything that London has to offer, from getting from their residence hall to class. Boston has a much more confined location. And honestly, that's just because Boston is an old city. There's only so far for us to grow. We really do have to be in a pretty confined location. And a meal plan is included on the Boston campus.
Amazing. And so you just mentioned sports. So I want to stop on sports for a little bit, because when students think about the US, especially, they think about sports. So do you have what kind of is the offer for sports, and do you have competitive teams with also Division 1, 2, or 3 on the NCAA, and potential scholarships for international students looking at sports?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are a Division I school when it comes to athletics in the United States, so the highest level of competition. International students are certainly eligible to be recruited for teams. We definitely recommend reaching out to coaches early, starting those conversations sooner, because typically by the beginning of senior year, students already have a pretty good idea of where they might be within that recruit process. But international students are certainly eligible for those opportunities too. Our biggest sport is hockey, and that's really because of our location in New England and near Canada. So I always tell students, even if you're from a place where ice hockey is not common, you are certainly going to become an ice hockey fan if you join the Northeastern community. I would say our most standout event of the entire year is called the Bean Pot competition. And so that's when all the local Division I universities in the area, including BU, including oh my gosh, I'm sorry. BU is the one I can think of right now. It's top of my head. I work for Northeastern. But anyway, so they all play at TD Garden, which is actually the large professional ice hockey rink right in the heart of the city. It's a weekend-long competition. There's a men's and a women's competition. For the last 6 years, we have won 11 out of the 12 for both men's and women's, which is really exciting. And the only reason why we didn't win that one time is because our top goalie was actually playing for the Canadian national team at the time. So for us, it's really exciting. It's something that we really love. But once again, that's highly competitive. I actually just hopped off a call earlier today with our club athletics teams, and we actually have one of the largest club athletics student populations in the country. So we have over 3,800 students participating in clubs. So even if you're not looking to do Division I, or maybe you want to try something new like rock climbing, we do have levels of competition for everybody.
Nice. So how big exactly are the undergraduate student population in each campus?
Yeah, so so for each campus it varies a little bit. So it's going to be a couple thousand on all of our smaller campuses, maybe 2 to 3, and then it's closer to 15 on our Boston campus.
15 or 50?
15, not 50. 15. There's not room for 50.
15 is already a lot.
Yeah.
All right, that's great. Thank you very much. All right, so let's talk a bit about the tuition fees and potential scholarships and how it works for both campuses.
Yeah.
So do you have is it the same kind of fee for everyone? Do you make a difference between students that would be American when they're in the US, or a difference between students that would have the UK residency applying to the London campus, or is it the same for everyone?
Yeah, so we do have two different sets of fees for our London campus and for our US campuses. So the US campus is going to be about $92,000 before aid comes into play. That includes everything: housing, food, total cost of attendance. It's going to be closer to like 35,000 euros for the London campus. When it comes to aid, typically there is limited aid available for international students, and that would be a merit-based aid. Students are automatically considered for that when they apply to the university. Okay. So no additional work is required.
They don't have to apply by a specific deadline like earlier to be eligible for these?
Nope. So every student who applies to the university will be considered for those.
Okay, great. Perfect. All right, so let's dive into the application process then. And I know it's going to be different as well, and there's probably different platforms you can use to apply to these schools. So how does it work? Let's start with the Boston campus. If a student is interested by Northeastern in the Boston, where are they going to apply? Are they going to use the Common App? Is that the only way to apply?
Yeah, so we have Common App and Coalition App.
Okay.
Yep. And then for the London campus, they can apply on those platforms also if they're interested, but we're also on UCAS. And then because I know there's a limit on UCAS too, we do have a direct app. So lots of different options on the London side.
Okay. And so how do you manage a UCAS, to compare a UCAS app with the Common App? Like, do you ask for extra things on the side of UCAS? Because the UCAS is quite limited with the one personal statement and that's it.
Yeah, no, so that is what we look at. We do keep it pretty simple on the London side. And then we also don't have any supplemental essays really on the US side too. So we're predominantly putting our focus on the academic rigor and the academic strengths of the students. Okay,
so would you say that overall in your selection process, it's not a holistic traditional US selection approach, it's more academic based?
So it is holistic on the US side still for sure. But academics is going to be the biggest piece of that puzzle. But we're of course looking at the letters of recommendation, personal statement, activities. And I would say when it comes to the holistic piece, what we're really trying to tease out of those areas is two things: a unique perspective and experiences. So how has the student's background really shaped who they are? How has their unique experience contributed to their decision making on how they've made impacts on their community or their local family? And then in addition to that, if a student has shown any ability to thrive. If they've overcome any adversity, any struggles, it's not required by any means for a student to be considered admissible to the university. But those are two traits that we are particularly trying to tease out when we're trying to understand a student from the holistic side outside of the academics.
So how do students manage when they apply through UCAS? Because I know sometimes it's a bit tricky for them because they're going to have one program that's going to be unique in their list of 5, and they can only write one personal statement. So how does it work when they apply to the London campus? Do they have to choose a very specific degree like they would for other UK universities, or is it more open and flexible like in the US, and therefore how should they gear that personal statement?
Yeah. So they are applying to a direct major because it is a UK degree. We're following that similar review process. So they are going to be applying for a direct program. On the US side, similarly to what you see at other US universities, there's a lot more freedom and flexibility in how they are able to, navigate changing majors. And in the review process, we're not expecting as much someone to be like, I'm a physics major, and this is, why I have an interest in physics. We're open to all different stories that they want to share.
But would they have in London a bit more flexibility than a regular traditional UK university, or would it be exactly the same, that kind of locked in that major?
So we do have essentially, I don't want to use it's not essentially electives, but they do have a few compulsory classes they have a few less compulsory classes, which does allow them to take and explore a few different areas. We're more competency based on the London campus. So we're saying, if you are taking classes that are related to data analysis, they'll have a few classes to pick from that area versus it being solely locked in.
Okay, yeah. So they still get that American flavor, I guess.
Exactly.
And, all right. What about SAT tests? Would you say that your test optional in Boston? Would you encourage international students to try to take it if they can? Would you say that would strengthen their application? Should they just not bother if it's not particularly offered in their school? Like, what would be your advice?
Great question. So we are truly test optional. We're committed to remaining test optional, even though I know some institutions are starting to switch back. So our average is between a 1460 and a 1530. That's our middle 50% range on the SAT. So it depends on, how a student performs, whether it's going to strengthen, and make them a more competitive candidate. I would never say that they need to take the SAT solely for Northeastern, because we do truly believe in that test optional policy. For example, in the initial review of an application, we don't even look at the scores. So a student already needs to display a level of merit and academic strength before they make it to committee, where we then will start to tease out that information. But if a student is already taking the test for another school, I feel like that's typically more common. They already have one school on their list that they really want to take the test for. They already have it. They think it's a strong reflection of their academics, by all means send it, but it's not going to hurt them if that information is not included.
Okay, great. What about English language? How do students need, international students, do they always have to say in an English language test? Which kind of test do you accept? Which kind of score you're looking for?
Sure. So we accept Duolingo, IELTS, TOEFL, and also Cambridge English. So we have a lot of flexibility there. When it comes to students that are eligible for a waiver, for students that are in the American or the British version of the French bac, if they have a 12 or higher on English, they are eligible for a waiver there. For students that have a predicted 6 or 7 on on English higher level courses in IB, they're also eligible for a waiver. So if they apply to the university in their portal, they are able to submit a form requesting a waiver if they fall into those categories.
All right, that's great. Thank you very much for that. What about whether it's in the IB with higher level, standard level, in the French bac with the special subjects, the spécialité. How should students think about that? If they are thinking about the US, is it really open and you accept any combination you're happy to consider for any track they want to take? Or is in the UK they have to be more careful depending on what major they might want to apply in?
Yeah, so they do need to be a little bit more careful on the London campus. That is all fully laid out, broken down by major right on the website. So that can definitely help them with their decision-making process on where to apply. On the US side, we are fully open. I do want to reassure students, because we have on the undergraduate side, we receive over 17,000 international applications a year. We're super familiar with students from all backgrounds, including French bac and of course IB. And so we're not just looking at the achievement of a student in their individual grades in these curriculums. We're also looking at the courses that they're taking. And so while I did say that we are flexible and we'll look at students of all backgrounds on the US side, we are still looking and saying, has the student built a rigorous IB diploma schedule or a less rigorous IB diploma schedule? And that information will be taken into consideration with the committee when we're making decisions.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes that's a bit. So, are you as clear as British universities for the London campus in terms of we're looking at this kind of grade, and do you also give conditional offers like they do in the UK?
We do. Yep. So we do have that on the UK side. We don't have conditional offers. It's much more traditional for US schools where we're just doing a holistic review.
Yeah. So it's a true. I didn't quite realize that it's a true Northeastern, but it is a British university, and it's really interesting. Great. Okay. Yes. Quick questions on in the US, early action, early decision. You have both. You even have early decision too, if I'm not mistaken. So how should students navigate this? Like, would you encourage them to apply early action if they can? Would you say an early decision is something that's smart to do if Northeastern is at the top of their list?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when it comes to our Boston campus specifically, we are highly selective. So our acceptance rate for the Boston campus is between 5 and 6%. So if students have their heart set on Boston, we are taking demonstrated interest into consideration, and early decision is considered one of the best ways to show demonstrated interest.
You can't demonstrate interest more than that.
Exactly. So that's really when I would recommend early decision. If a student really knows that Northeastern is the right fit for them, they're super excited about Boston, that's really the best way to show that interest. What I will say is that if there's a student who has any questions about finances, they can request an early decision financial aid review. And we'll essentially say, based off of what we see in your application, this is about how much we would expect the institution to cost you, which should help with that decision-making process in applying early decision. And then we do have ED too. So let's say a student, they apply early action, they get deferred, they could change to early decision too, which is really nice. So we have a little bit of flexibility there.
All right. That's great. What about the visa process for international students? Do you see any difficulty? Is it okay for both UK, US? We have students based everywhere with our platform in Morocco, in Spain, in Mauritania, in Indonesia. Is it a different process depending on where you come from, or would you say that any international students should be with an offer should be eligible to go for these visas?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So one of the things that I'm really proud about being at Northeastern is because our international student population is so large, we are so familiar with these processes. Right? Like anyone who's going to Northeastern from another country is not the only student. Like we are working with literally thousands of students to get their visas day in and day out, which is really incredible. The most common reason why we see a visa denial or a reason why a student isn't able to start on time for their semester is actually because they just didn't do the paperwork done in time. So as long as the student is following all the right steps and is really being in close contact with our OGS, our global services office, then they should be completely fine. And once again, like you're saying, like Morocco or anywhere, like we have students coming from every corner of the earth. So we're really familiar in both places. And then so we have an office not only for the US, but we also have an office for UK. So regardless of the visa type that a student is applying for, we're very familiar.
All right. And in the US, what do you see international students do after an undergraduate degree at Northeastern? Would they move on mostly to work, or as you said, because you have all that experience built in, do they work? And if they work, do they remain in the US? And do you see them successfully being able to start a career and stay in the US, or do they tend to go back to maybe their home country or move to somewhere else?
Great question. So, like I said, 97% of our students are going on to graduate school or working within 9 months. And I would say that I don't have the exact breakdown, but I would say more students go on to work. And I think that's because of our co-op program. Students are already building networks, building mentors in their fields. And 60% of the time, they're getting a job offer before they graduate. So I think that is just really appealing to a young student, to a young graduate. They're like, I might as well go out there, get working, and then some will transition back to graduate school. I think most students that go on to graduate school immediately after graduation are folks that came in knowing that they were like, I want to be a lawyer. I want to be a doctor. Like that was a path that they were already on from day one. As far as where students are choosing to work and where they're working after graduation, it's a mixed bag. So some students are staying in the US because of our ability to have students work so much while they're employed. They're really good candidates for OPT to stay on in the US, sometimes at the company that they did their co-op with before graduation. Other students will go back home. I think especially in the coming years with our new administration, we might see some shifts and changes. Not sure yet, but we might see some some ebbs and flows on where students are choosing to go. The nice thing is that if a student does know that they want to come back home after graduation, if that's really important to them, we have employment opportunities for co-op, not just in the US, but all over the world. So we never just tell a student this is the company that they're working for. They, similar to their college search process, where they're in the driver's seat and decide where they want to apply and ultimately get to decide which school they go to. It's the same for these co-op opportunities. So if a student knows that they want to stay in the US, they can apply to only co-op jobs in the US to start to build those bridges. If they know that they want to go back home, they can look for co-op jobs back in their home country and work there for their co-op experiences to build those bridges now early on. So it's not a one size fits all, but what I think is the most important thing is we have that freedom and flexibility to meet students where they're at with whatever goals they have.
That's great. Thank you, Christy. I think we covered a lot of ground. Is there anything else that we missed or that you feel like you should share about Northeastern, something we haven't touched, or do you think we've covered?
I think we've covered a lot. I think the one thing that I want to highlight just a little bit more is the student experience is with all of our campuses. Like I did say, they all are in cities. And so they really become an extended part of our campus. We do have really incredible communities at all of our different locations. But whether they're in Boston or California or London, students that really thrive at Northeastern are taking advantage of not only the opportunities that our institution has to provide, but the greater community too. So for example, in Boston, one of my favorite events is the Boston Marathon. It's one of the largest marathons in the world. And, I feel like a lot of people might hear like, oh, running, like I'm not a runner. Let me tell you, I'm not a runner either. But it is a really fun, special day. It's on a Monday. So all the universities, all the offices, all the businesses in the city close. And the entire Boston community comes out to cheer for the runners. And so that's just one example in the Boston area, but there's things like that on all of our campuses. And I think that that's just a really exciting feature that, as someone who comes to our school is not just gaining the community of our institution, they're gaining the community of their colleagues in the industry that they want to join, but also in the community that they're located.
All right. And on a final note, what would be your advice to a 14, 15, 16-year-old student thinking about Northeastern, seeing how, great it looks and what would be your advice for these students that are thinking about it?
Yeah, I would say pursue what it is that you're excited about. I think students really sometimes get caught up too much on this is what I think I should do to be considered a strong applicant for a university versus doing what they want to do or what they're excited about. Because if a student is really excited about what they're pursuing, whether it's in the classroom or outside the classroom, that's going to shine on their application. So I definitely see that to be a value add. The other thing is if you ever, because we have so many locations, there's hopefully a campus nearby for you to visit. You can visit our London campus. You can visit California. You can visit Boston. New York's coming soon. We do have pre-college programs in all those in most of those locations, and more coming soon in the other locations. So if you ever wanted to just try us out for a few weeks over the summer, students are always welcome to do that too.
All right. Well, that's great. Great advice. Thank you very much for your time, Christy.
Of course.
Goodbye to everyone, and we'll see you soon on another episode of the Anywhere Uni podcast.